Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Psychology and Spirituality, a Bridge to a Better Life discussion. I'm your host, Marcia Trajano, and with me is Yuri Castro. Yuri, it's so good to have you back with us. And just know that I really enjoy how we come together, our conversations around psychology and spirituality. If you don't know Yuri yet, he's a clinical psychologist, sorry, and a spiritist. Hi, Yuri. How's everything?
Everything is great. Thank you so much, Marcia. Always a pleasure to be here.
Awesome, awesome. And Yuri, I just wanted to start a conversation because we're now tackling, right, self-discovery and existential meaning of life. So I wanted to perhaps take a second to introduce our conversation because existential meaning of life, right, can be defined as the search for purpose, the search for meaning, for significance in a world that we live that is so chaotic at best and at worst indifferent. We live a world that nobody cares, right? Nobody cares. And when we talk about existential, right, existential meaning, I think it's important for us to perhaps reference the work by the very famous existentialist like Jean-Paul Sartre, Albert Camus, and they both argued that life has no inherent meaning. Oh boy. And they argued that we, you and I, and all of us here, all of us that are part of this or life with another 8 billion people, like each one of us must create our own meaning. And we do that through choices, actions, experiences. So, on one hand, this perspective emphasizes to all of us to seek personal freedom at the same time exercising that with responsibility, and points us to this idea of living authentically, living an authentic life. And this is on one hand, right? On the other hand, this also acknowledges your the struggles that we all face, which is just living, simply existing. As I mentioned briefly, our society today as a whole is dealing with so much, right? And I know psychologists like yourself are, I'm sure, dealing with patients that are facing isolation, but are facing increasing isolation, but also facing anxiety, struggling with the inevitability of death. And thank goodness for our belief systems that, from a spirituality perspective, that physical death does not mean death, right? But regardless of that, it is all packaged together, quite scary, isn't it? So I'd love if we could spend a few minutes talking about how we can confront these challenges. How can we find our path to achieving a life that is fulfilled, of embracing all of these uncertainties, but really creating our own meaningful narrative as we face the absurdity of it all, right? How can we be ready and have the courage to take on this journey to self discovery? What are your thoughts?
Excellent reflection, Marcia. I think that you touched on many different subjects that are very interesting. I want to start talking about the meaning of life, as you started saying, like those philosophers. It came to my mind the idea that we life is what we make of it. So we assign the meaning to our lives, to our experiences as a whole.
Mhm.
And talking about the field of clinical psychology made me think of the diathesis stress model of disorders, which is this idea that most conditions, there is a genetic component behind them, most of these disorders that we have in the DSM-5 TR, but there's also something else that accounts for that. So let me give an example. When we're talking about schizophrenia,
Mhm.
concordance rates of twins, fraternal and identical, meaning those who are genetically the same and those who are not genetically the same, 100% the same, is 48% for those who are genetically identical, meaning if one twin develops schizophrenia, there's a 48% chance, or 48% of the cases the other one will, but it's only 26% for those who are not genetically the same, and even when they're raised in different places in life. So there's a lower rate, which means that even though biology accounts for a lot of that, it doesn't account for it all. There's
Mhm.
something behind, there's something else that accounts for these changes, and in this example, the development of a disorder as debilitating as schizophrenia.
Mhm.
And therapies, I mean, different psychological approaches have started to look into that. What are the meaning of these stressful events, and how can they trigger these conditions? So there must be
Mhm.
something there that separates those who are genetically the same, in which one will develop a condition while the other one will not, even when they're raised apart or when they're raised under the same household. So
Yeah.
there is very much, we can say, scientific proof for this idea that we do attach some meaning to our traumatic experiences or our experiences in general that can even dictate the course of a psychiatric condition for us to think about.
Yeah. This is very interesting, right? From a statistical measure of that biological aspect of schizophrenia in this case, right? And what are your thoughts in terms of okay, two twins and one develops schizophrenia, one does not. What is the trigger event based
Mm-hmm.
on the research that you've seen, or what are the things that let's say I am a mother of twins, what can I do to look for those evidence that
Yeah.
there may be something there?
Yeah, so the idea is a good question. The idea is that even, let's say, the twins are 100% the same genetically and they are raised under the
Mhm.
same household, and let's say it's a traumatic household, one
Yeah.
will, if one develops, the other one won't. It already hints to this idea that psychologically there is a difference in those two, even though everything, if you think about it, everything is the same. The environment is basically
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah.
Genetically, they're the same. They're physically and everything are, they're identical. You know, they're the same. But
Mhm.
there's something else there, and that's why I think, and this is where I think Spiritism brings
Mhm.
so much light into this issue, because yes, through the eyes of our through our materialistic eyes, through the eyes of the world, superficially, they are the same. They are raised the same. How can one develop and the other one doesn't? But then we've got to remember that all of this, all of the material is passing, is in passing. It's not gonna last. It's ephemeris. But there's a
Yeah.
spirit inside. There's an eternal spirit inhabiting that body with its own set of challenges, with its own sets of qualities. So that is the biggest leap, I think, and that's where Spiritism can contribute so much to science in general, to the psychological field, by shedding
Mhm.
light into these individual differences that exist, no matter if the environment is the same, no matter if genetically they're the same.
So let me pivot back to the question, right? So for a parent looking to the external evidence of this or that, it doesn't matter because it's superficial. It's material. It brings that material lens to which we're looking at life. So, how can we pivot that to what about our journey, this self discovery journey? Because it is a very individual journey, right? A parent cannot do that journey for the child, right? How can we use that to really um, understanding to what you were alluding earlier, this attributing meaning to our lives?
Great question. I mean, it is this idea that no, we're all individual beings, and you mentioned the parents. So what to look for is
Hmm.
definitely to look for any signs of trauma, anything that those, let's say, mother of twins or
Hmm.
father of twins, that, and
Hmm.
knowing that those two are different. They're very different. They're different spirits. They're different individuals.
Hmm.
So looking
Hmm.
for signs on both of them, but understanding that one may show signs and the other one may
Yeah.
not. But that doesn't mean that the one that's showing will develop. It could be actually the
Hmm.
other way around. So just
Yeah.
being mindful and attentive as a parent to the individual differences and the individual needs of both of them. And let me tie that to your second question of the self discovery, because, yeah, the self knowledge or the self discovery, this process, this arduous process that we're still going through, also puts the light back on us. The mirror is raised, and we're looking at ourselves and seeing, okay, what are some of my own challenges? What are some of my own shortcomings? What are some of
Hmm.
my own abilities, and how can I contribute to not only my life, my own, process of individuation, my own idea of this development, but also to those around me.
Yeah. Very, very, very interesting. Um, Reflections, right? Indeed, Joanna de Angelis, she has written extensively about this topic. So whenever she talks about self-discovery, she really emphasizes this importance of taking the time, investing the energy for this self-discovery through introspection and understanding who we are truly. But how can we do this? Do you know anything that we can perhaps bring here as aspects for how to start our own journey and how to uncover those layers, right? And we peel one layer, there's a deeper one that belongs to us in this, as Freud puts, right, our personal unconscious. And Jung explores even further with the collective unconscious. But those are so many layers that we are immersed in. How can we start to be able to peel those through the journey of self-discovery? What are your thoughts? And maybe you can elucidate to everyone here on this live.
Yeah, so I think that the first step is to have the courage to look inward, to have the courage to put, like I said, to raise the mirror and try to see
Yeah.
what can we discover. Because if we look at the word itself, self-discovery, we're discovering, and the process of discovery means that there's something there. So
Yeah.
what are we gonna find? Once when we put the mirror to ourselves and we're trying to look to see what we're gonna encounter, what we're gonna discover, because there is something there. And what is there is this immortal spirit with all its flaws and its abilities and all of the things that he has accomplished. But there's so much more that we need to accomplish. There's so much more that we still have ahead of us in terms of growth, in terms of development. So
And from the back, sorry to interrupt, but from the back, right, all that we carry, that we bring in, we can say there are trauma, there are moments of extreme pain that we carry that we may not be truly aware of, almost as if. Um, use the word self-discovery, and the mental image, Yuri, is the pioneers. Let's talk about North America, right? So if you think about even today, how strenuous it is to, if you say, I'm going to go on a hike, right? I'm going to go on a hike today, and oh, what do I have to take with me? Well, boots, so you don't step on snakes that will bite you, or pepper spray for the bears that you encounter. Can you imagine 500 plus years ago when those first pioneers were doing that, encounter this virgin territory full of everything that you don't know how to even deal with? And we do the same, right? How can we look at it with the eyes of this curious pioneer that needs to be prepared, to look at it and look at this entire new world with a sense of how can we deal with this new situations, new environments. I don't know. Those are the thought processes that came to my mind as we're talking.
And when you mention new world, it's interesting because yeah, we can definitely make an analogy, and I think it's
Mhm.
a good analogy of these pioneers all the way back then, and we ourselves being the pioneers, but we're discovering it's something that, like I said, it's already there. It's ourselves. But when we look
Mhm.
inward, when we have the courage to look inward, it's we do have to be prepared, and I think that that's a very good point that you bring. So we need to have the courage. We need to have all these tools to be able to explore ourselves and see the shadow parts of ourselves, to see all of
Mhm.
those pieces that we don't want to look at, or we don't want to accept, or we shy away from examining. And
Mhm.
that's those are the pepper sprays, the boots, like all those things that you're saying are all these, I think, psychological and spiritual tools that we can acquire in order to proceed in journey that is so important, in this self discovery, like I said, in this process of looking at ourselves and knowing that we are immortal beings, and we have had a lot of challenges. We have acquired a lot of abilities throughout our existences, or multiple existences, and this idea that we can come in and we can still develop, but we need to have the courage and we need to have the tools to do that.
Are there any tools that we can talk about it for be better prepared? What are
Absolutely. I
what are
think
what are the pepper sprays that we
the
can
pe-
from a
I
spiritual
say the
perspective?
boots. Let's use the same ones you said. I say the boots are knowledge. I think knowledge is
Okay.
the boots because it's almost like the foundation. And when I
Yeah.
say knowledge, I don't mean just psychological knowledge. I mean spiritual knowledge as well. And that is something that I think, again, spiritism is such a blessing to our lives because it provides us with these boots that we can walk
Yeah.
in the jungle of ourselves and
It's
know
very
that we are
rich.
on solid
Yeah.
ground.
Yeah.
We know.
Very rich indeed, right? Yeah. So boots for its knowledge. What else?
Boots for the knowledge, I think the pepper spray, which is something more, like, I don't know, incisive, something more in the moment. I think this could also be achieved through therapy. I know I'm a clinical
Mhm.
psychologist. I may be biased in saying that, but I think that we all can benefit from therapy
Yes.
in different degrees, but we all can benefit from that. So that the therapy, this idea of exploring ourselves and being vulnerable and having the courage to explore ourselves with the help of a professional. And again, this it doesn't have to be one specific line of work, but just going to therapy and having that capacity to explore ourselves, that can be a tool that is very, very important in this process of the self discovery. So it's our pepper spray.
Uh-huh. Shall we go for continue our analogy? Let's think in terms of maybe protection, so sunblocks
Excellent.
or right insect repellent. Is there anything that we can use to repel against things that may hurt us?
For people listening, we did not rehearse it. This is this is in the moment, okay? Yes, I think the insect repellents, as you're saying, the sunblock, that could be
Mhm.
prayer. That could be
Mm.
connecting our thoughts, elevating our vibrations, and connecting our thoughts with our heavenly Father, with the good spirits that are always there to help us. With that, is we create this sort of protection around
Yeah,
us against the negative influences from outside or from the inside as well.
yeah, yeah. And I would just say, everyone, this is an exercise, a self-discovery that is not for the faint of heart. It is something that we all should do, must do eventually, right? But it doesn't come easily because it really requires that pioneer spirit, right? It requires us facing our own fears that we somehow repress, right? That we put down. I'm afraid of blah blah, and I'm embarrassed to even talk about it. So I somehow repress it. I don't want to do it. And self-discovery implies, well, let's look at those things that cause me fear as well, right, Yuri? Questioning. all the societal norms that I'm inserted on, right? So in my
Yes.
case, where I am right now, it represents perhaps my age, my birth of origin, my ability to communicate with this language versus another language, the all the tools that I have, what is my social network that help me, etc., etc. But uh, in terms of all that defines me, there are norms that somehow we accept blindly, right? And this self discovery also means looking out and say, is this even right? Is this something that I should reflect and perhaps even quote unquote rebel against, right? And finally, as we do all of it, we become alone, right? And we become very vulnerable because it's like, but I thought I was so strong, and I was inserted in this society. I knew how to speak this, and I'm speaking language, not English, Portuguese, French, etc., but the language of, in your case, the clinical psychology. I can express my thoughts, or if I'm not, but if I were to be an art critic, that language that speaks well of that. So when we just say, wait a minute, this is just not all there is, we become alone. We kind of become more naked toward all that life is. And so, not for the faint of heart. Can we? I don't know if you're in a position to perhaps talk a little bit more about vulnerability. How can we discuss this? Uh, this idea of I decided I'm going to be intentional about embarking on a journey of self-discovery. So I know that I'll be vulnerable. How can I handle that? I don't know if you have any examples, Yuri, or even any additional metaphors that we can utilize.
Absolutely. Yes. I Let me just mention something you said in the beginning that I really liked. Is you said it's not for the faint of heart, because we tend to avoid that. I dare say I go even further. I dare say that a
Mm,
lot of the issues that we have now are
yeah,
because we didn't have the courage to face them in previous lives. We didn't
interesting.
have the courage to sort of improve ourselves in those specific areas in previous existences. So
Mm,
we are now carrying that with us because
yeah,
we need to deal with that. So it is not only a blessing to be able to go on the self discovery process, but it's also a necessity for
yeah,
us to continue to evolve, in the process of our spiritual depuration. So again, I dare say that we have a lot of these things that we are afraid to look at, or especially the ones that scare us the most about ourselves,
yeah,
are things that we have not worked before, and they're carrying almost like this burden, this
yeah.
boulder that we're carrying with us into this life, and we definitely need to take care of that, and we have all the tools necessary. Honestly,
Can I
that's
can I stop you before hold on to your thought, right? But I just wanted for all of us who are here today in this live, just give a little bit of reference because Yuri references, right? The immortal spirit, the continuity of life with many different existence, and I just wanted to perhaps frame that with some interesting work, and this is scientific work to discuss this. To if you don't believe in all of this, right? But if you want to know more, I think it's important to perhaps talk about or reference the work that Dr. Brian Weiss, a just super well-known psychiatrist and author, one of his bestsellers is Many Lives, Many Masters, right, Yuri, where he talks about patients that during a therapeutical session, and I think he was dealing with trauma in many cases, right? A phobia, etc., etc. And he did hypnosis, And during those sessions, those patients brought an entire to the session, an entire view of what's inside of them, including previous lives, previous trauma. And the other work that has been brought to us, quite well known, is the work by Dr. Ian Stevenson. Both of them are here in the US, but Dr. Stevenson is a pioneer in the study of the memory of past lives, right? And he, in doing so, he conducted, I think it was over 2,500 children
Yeah.
that he, right, that he talked, and they remembered their past lives, and not only remembered, because you can say, if you're 3 years old, if you're 4 year old, it's all their imagination. But those were documented, and those were also confirmed, including I'm taking too long here, but I thought it's super cool to talk about. It was the fact of James Leininger. He was a young child that he started to have nightmares. I don't know if you remember that, Yuri, but he started having nightmares, and he kept coming back with the idea that he was a second World War II,
Pilot. Yeah.
yeah, pilot. And he remembered, and not only he remembered the name of his previous life. He remembered very specific details of the aircraft that he was piloting, and all of it, and all of those details were confirmed. So I just love it, because as we talk about self-discovery in this archives of past experience, is important for us in this discussion to understand. You go through self-discovery, but you also start to enter things that you didn't even know was there, right?
Yes. Can I add another one?
Yes, of course.
Jim Tucker, which is
Yes.
a student, I guess, of Dr. Stevenson. He has
Yeah.
a book called Life Before Life. In
Mhm.
that, he also investigates cases throughout the world. So he's removing the cultural aspect, because some people may say, oh, because some cultures tend to believe more in past lives and reincarnation. He goes through cultures all over the world, gets people who speak the language. So he's also he and his team, they also exclude the confounding variable, as we call in research, of the language, translation. They
Mhm.
go and they see cases through in the entire world. So I definitely recommend that one. It's called Life Before Life by Dr. Jim Tucker.
Nice. I have put all of that information for us, so you can see, references in the um, notes about today's episode. But let's go ahead and
Yes.
continue, because I interrupted you. So my apologies. So we're talking about vulnerability, right? And
Yes.
how in doing so, you need to be strong, and really, I love that um, that reference, Yuri, that reference that we are pioneers, right? And that we need to have courage. We need to have our protections. Those protections, as you mentioned, are, for example, knowledge. For example, embarking in therapy, a therapeutical processes, and as well as use the tools, including prayer, meditation, etc., to safeguard and align you with the divine, right? But let's talk a little bit about more about that sense of vulnerability, because as you go looking inside, you can access your past lives as well, as you're mentioning.
Yes. And for that, I want to mention Brené Brown. She became quite
Mhm.
famous recently, but her whole work is on. I mean, not whole work, but a lot of the work that she does is on vulnerability, and it has brought some incredible knowledge to us.
Mhm.
And you mentioned something about society. When I think about, we have to be vulnerable to be able to go on this process of self-discovery and find
Mhm.
what meaning we tie to our lives. I think of
Mhm.
society and the societal pressures, and nowadays it's even more um, difficult. It's become even harder to go on this process of self-discovery, not
Mhm.
only to ourselves but to others. because
Yeah.
everything, there's a lot of concerns with image nowadays. There's social
Yes.
media has, widened our global, our civilization, I guess. We're not constricted to those around us. I can say something or post something that somebody's going to be seeing in Japan, Australia, Europe, right? No, here and everywhere. So nowadays we're much more transparent. Like
Mm.
we have been thrust into the limelight, and the idea is that nowadays it becomes it's even harder to look inward and say, you know what, I still have this flaw here. I still need to work on that, and be able to admit that to ourselves, and knowing that we're going to be seen by others with those flaws. I
Uh-huh.
think that's the biggest contemporary challenge. And again, it's definitely something, that vulnerability, and having this idea that we need to work on our vulnerability. We need to be able to be vulnerable in order to go through with this process despite the pressures from the outside.
Yeah, yeah. And I just want to say what you said sparked another thought process here in my mind, which is, well, I don't know, in the age of television, right? In the age of radio, political figures, for example, that were the ultimate public persona in the 30s, 40s, etc. They could have their own life, but then during the broadcast of that radio, it was a well crafted, well revised, scripted discussion, right? Um, Fast forward to the age of television, and you can start to see that beyond the voice and the words, it's really how do you look, and how we, public at large, start to look at it and judge. Well, you're not tall enough, good looking enough, have the right mannerisms, etc., right? Some people say that Roosevelt would never be elected today because of what he was going through, physically speaking,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's really terrible to say that we have become purveyors of this physicality that came with TV. But now there is this other aspect of it, that the public persona, with the PR firms and an entire mechanism to protect that the bubble of what people see in reality. We are all, as you mentioned, public personas. We ourselves did that, right? We exposed, almost in some case from birth, pictures and reactions, and of course, most of us, me included, find it odd that yesterday, I'm just going to be cheeky here, Yuri. Yesterday, I gave public declarations of love to, say, boyfriend number one, right? Public declarations, and then go through divorce or separation, and then second one and third one, and then if you're a follower, right? Air quote here, follower of that person, you start to see, but is it real love? Is that undying, unconditional, forever love? Not really forever. So even your words start to lose and be diluted in face of that publicity, that public persona that we all are now available. And that puts us into a different questions. In the future, let's pretend we all now have the capability of accessing telepathically each other's processes. Isn't that the ultimate sense of vulnerability, when we no longer have to safeguard, from radio to TV, our physicality, from TV to social media, the directional, one direction of our thought processes instead of this. Uh, 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 I keep thinking of turns and points and counterpoints of who we are, which is who we are, right? We we're full of contradictions. We say something, we feel something else, we fall prey to certain things. So that is the area of vulnerability that we have to understand to truly be, metaphorically speaking, naked. We need to be authentic. So forget about those masks that we create about what we would like to be, but who we're not, and let's embrace who we are. Does this make sense to you, what I'm saying?
When you mention it, it made me think you're talking about the evolution of technology. Made me think as well of the this
Mhm.
idea that we all carry cell phones nowadays,
That's
and
right.
those devices plus, like I said, social media. Before it was the voice, like you said, the radio, the voice, like what they
Uh-huh.
were saying, how they were saying. And then it became television. When they would go and they would present themselves, there would be a recording people would see. But nowadays, people have access. They can have access to our entire lives all the time, and we can like grant them access as well to our personal lives. Or if we're outside, and we said we're all public personas, if we're outside, somebody can snap a photo of us, can record
Yes.
us. So there is really, we all became very transparent. All those things that we try to keep away are not, we're not really doing a good job. And again, to bring a little bit of spiritism to sprinkle into this conversation, we can think of question 459 of the spirits book, of how much
Hmm.
we're influenced by the spirits. So this idea that
Yes.
even in our thoughts, even in our minds, like there's still some ways to be influenced by that and to be vulnerable in the way that we can be.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So let's we have a few more minutes. Let's talk a little bit about the vulnerability. Um, Maybe because of I was studying a little bit earlier on Carl Gustav Jung, right? How he emphasizes this process of vulnerability and self discovery from the perspective that it's all about embracing oneself and embarking in the inevitable process of individuation, right? So, what is individuation in so many words? Is simply put, the process for integrating all the aspects of who we are, right? We talked about all the con, uh, the conflicts, all of our idiosyncrasies, all the fact that I want to be humble, but boy, in this situation X, I was really arrogant, but that's who I am still today. I may be better tomorrow, but today, the snapshot within a film that is our life, right? In that moment, I may not correspond with my behavior, with my intention. So, all of that multiplicity of aspects of our personality that we bring, which reflects our, as you mentioned before, Yuri, our long journey, right? And I'm talking to you, putting my hands towards my back because it's the sense that we carry this journey that we're not even aware it's behind us, but it betray us, that journey betrays us in what we are today. There is an interconnectedness on the Marcia from yesterday, the Marcia today, and Marcia tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about how does self-discovery, how embracing those multifaceted aspects of who we are and how we behave. So it's a from a behavior perspective as well as values, but how that self-discovery is essential for us to attain that meaningful life or life full of significance.
When you mention it, it made me think of the requirements or the prerequisites that Joanna de Angelis mentions
Yeah.
that are necessary for us to achieve the self discovery and this journey. And she also
Hmm.
mentions the word journey, so it
Yeah.
made me think of that. So she
Uh-huh.
says there are five of these prerequisites, and I think it's interesting for people who are listening or watching to know. She says the number one is the dissatisfaction with what one is
Yeah.
or has or how one finds oneself. So there needs to be this dissatisfaction, and
Mhm.
sometimes this can be a veiled dissatisfaction, or is not so easily accessible.
So it's like the sense of discomfort, right?
Yes, a sense
Oh,
of uh-huh.
I'm supposed to be happy. I have it all. Yet there's that sense of something is not quite right.
Something is not quite right. I need to work on this, even though I don't want to, but I need to. So there's this discomfort, this dissatisfaction. Number
Hmm.
two, she calls a sincere desire for change.
Hmm.
So there needs to be this desire to make the change so you can find the satisfaction that you don't have.
The
Number three,
intentionality, right?
intentionality.
So
Yes.
for me, I would understand it's 31st of December, and ooh, I come up with my list that, oh, by the way, it's the same list of the past 15 years.
Yes.
But where's my intention to change, even if it's not in that list, right? What is my intention, my commitment to change?
Exactly. Number three, she says the persistence in the attempt. Look at that. So the persistence, this aspect of resiliency, of not giving up when we're trying to conquer parts of ourselves that we perhaps have tried in the past and failed, but now we need to persist. We need to have this resiliency in our attempt to change our condition and change ourselves in this process of self-discovery. What do you think?
I love it. I love it. It's we fall like the child, right? That the sense of a child learning to walk is incredibly equal
Yes.
to me, right? That child that needs, if you think about it, it's not born walking, right? And it doesn't even know how to roll at the early weeks of life, but in attempting to roll, you start to create the muscular requirements to move, and the way you move and fall, right? That the resiliency, the more you try, the more you become stronger, the better prepared you are to the first step, the second step, the the ability to walk seamlessly, and at some point not only just run. And I love this concept here, Yuri, because the incredible capability of all of us humans to move with grace, right? To dance, to have rhythm. And I often wonder to myself, all right, if you think of, let's say, a wounded veteran, for example, lost the legs or lost the ability to walk, and the best of the best technology, the best of the best, it still does not have the grace, just the grace, the rhythm of regular human walk, right? The best of the best, even robotics. It's the same. It's very choppy, yet we get it. All of us have it, but starts with falling and having that, in the case of a child, that impulse to keep on trying. You fall, you get back up again. Love it.
I agree with that. So number three is persistence. Number
Yeah.
four, she says, is the willingness to accept oneself and overcome oneself.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
this made me think of, since we're in the field of psychology a little bit here, Carl Rogers. He
Yeah.
said that we cannot change, has this quote that says, we cannot change, we cannot move away from what we are until we thoroughly accept what we are. So this
Yeah.
willingness to accept our condition, accept, our flaws and try to work on them. But if we don't have the acceptance piece, and I usually like to make this reference with being diagnosed, let's say with a cancer, you
Yeah.
can get the diagnosis, and
Mhm.
but you only gonna start treatment when you accept the reality that you have the diagnosis. And I think the acceptance is almost the bridge between, when you find out what you have and the issue, and the healing process, the treatment. The acceptance is this bridge that
Yeah.
connects that.
Beautiful. Yeah. Beautifully said. Thanks for that.
In the fifth one, the last one, is capacity for emotional growth. that she talks about. So, capacity for emotional growth, because the process of self discovery, the journey of self discovery, and tying that to the existential meaning of life is related to growth.
Yeah. Oh, this is awesome. Um, Wanted to, maybe we have just a minute or so, bring, we've referenced in several individuals and their books, but I wanted to maybe bring to us someone that I'm a fan. All right. And I don't know if you know him. I'm sure you do. But Saint Augustine, right? So Saint Augustine, Yuri, is so we have to put a little bit of context about who he is and who he was. But he is one of the church fathers, right? He is considered one of the most influential figure in Western Christianity, and but he was inserted in the culture the fourth century. So think about fourth century; it's 300 plus years after Jesus, right? A.D., and it really marks that the brink between the Christianity being adopted and disseminated globally, and beforehand, which is inserted in a very in pagan culture and religion. So, anyways, so he's a young man. He lives in Algeria. Today is Algeria, right? North Africa. He at the time very wealthy, very accessed everything he wanted. So this is the parallels here. And but he was very known to have a life of self-indulgence, right? I live for
Yes.
pleasure, right? I live to get all my desires fulfilled. And he does that and he embraces that up until the moment that he goes through this conversion, right? So those moments of conversion, that is not a switch of the of a light switch that we all think about it. But for example, we can reference Saint Paul, right, or Saul and Paul in the road to Damascus, or even Saint Francis. Those are figures that come to my mind as those that were converted from one life to another. But in the case of Saint Augustine, he was converted still, and he ended up becoming the bishop of Hippo. So he's known as Saint Augustine, Augustine of Hippo, and he ended his life so many years later, I think, still working as the bishop. But what I would like to bring us at our final moments together is the fact that he he wrote profusely, and he wrote about free will. So freedom to act, freedom to think, freedom of pursuing. But he also, in one of his books was Confessions, right? He talks about the sense of grace, the sense of what is sin, what is not a sin, who is God, what is the nature of God. So all of those thought processes shaped how we think of Christianity today, right? But the thing that I would like to bring to all of us here is that he talks about attaining this sense of meaningful life. Ah, it all comes together. And that sense of having a meaningful life is all about seeking this relationship, in his case, right, with God. And I move my hand up and down vertically because that's how I see my connection with God, and aligning my will with this divine purpose. So for us to do this, he said you must invest, and you have to endeavor in understanding your own human desire, which is what you're saying with those five prerequisites, right? Understand who you are and decide, have the intention of undergoing in a journey that includes inner reflection, faith, pursuit of the truth, and I love it, compassion. So he
Excellent.
right?
Excellent. Hmm.
So he brought all of it, because without those, it's empty. It's just a journey of discovery without compassion for oneself, compassion for others. So he's just to conclude, his thought about around a meaningful life is all about this loving relationship with yourself, with God, guided by grace, and expressed through how you behave, how you love the others. So in your own capacity, because of course we know love has an infinite number of gradation. My expression love is very different
Yes.
than
Mm-hmm.
some like a Mother Teresa, for example, right? But that expression of how I can love others and myself, and at the same time not stop seeking my own truth, right? So, do you want to say something else before we close?
I love the comment about Saint Augustine. Yeah, and compassion is almost like the missing link. I think the missing
Yeah.
ingredient, because we
Mhm.
can talk about the know thyself and how important that is and the journey of self discovery, but also having the compassion towards ourselves, knowing
Yes.
that we're still imperfect, we're still, we're still going and we're trying to become the better version of ourselves. I mean, the best version of ourselves, and
Mhm.
having compassion with our own
Yeah.
mistakes, still striving to be the best that we can be, but having compassion to ourselves when we fall and just get up and continue walking.
Love it. So for all of us, as we close here today, we find this idea, this point of know thyself, right? Which is really an imperative if you think about, right, Yuri? It's this notion, but this imperative is not new. It's not Yuri's imperative or Marcia's or Joanna de Angelis. It comes all the way from Greek philosophy, and it's attributed, for example, to Socrates as from the Oracle of Delphi, that he brought that idea of you have to know thyself. So, what are the implications on knowing yourself or embarking in a journey of self discovery? First of all, you have to have self awareness, right? So let's understand where we are and who we are by analyzing perhaps our thoughts. And please interrupt me if I'm going sideways here, Yuri, but your thoughts, emotions, values, motivations, right? And knowing that, I'd say in modern life, in your day to day, at work, at home, etc., those just the self awareness can lead us to achieve better decision making, to have a sense of personal growth, professional growth. This is number one, perhaps. But if we keep on going with that, we talk about knowing thyself, right? Know thyself imperative as a sense of authenticity, and knowing who you are. Uh, knowing um, how that sense of authenticity can or not align with my belief systems, or is my sense of self or lack of authenticity, I'm just joking here, can really just be a how I conform to the external expectations for me, right? So for example, if I'm just going all really off here, but let's pretend I'm a princess, right? I was born and I live in a monarchy, let's say England. The expectations for my behaviors are very, very different than who I am today, right? So
Yes.
let's think about how do I think of myself, what is my authentic self, and is that authenticity just how I conform with my surroundings or how people expect of me. um, Responsibility, right? So it's a sense of for me to know myself is I need to understand how my decisions, my thoughts, my omissions really brings a result, and how I am responsible for that, how all of my behaviors impact or not others around me, right? And I think if I can just finish up here is to understand that knowing ourselves can really, as you mentioned and Joanna mentioned, provide a sense of resilience in facing our own life's challenges, how it also can help us navigate our own difficulties with clarity, but most important, purpose, right? So, overall, what we can say, know thyself. Let us really embrace this foundational principle for our own development. Okay.
Love
But
it.
thank you. And this is, we are at time. We are really at the brink of my time to say goodbye. But I just want to say, if this is the first time you listen to our program, please note the Psychology and Spirituality weekly talks are based on the works of Joanna de Angelis, but we're here to save to offer the safe space for us to talk, to compare, to confront, right, between thinking and ideas. But this is all about bringing concepts that are spiritual in nature from a psychological perspective. So it's really marrying those perspectives so that we all can lead a better life. I want to thank our sponsors. They are Mansão do Caminho, the United States Spiritist Federation, the International Spiritist Council, and AMI Brazil. And for those who do not know, it's AMI Brazil is the Brazilian arm of the Medical Spiritist Association. With that, I want to say thank you and hope to see you back again next week. Thank you, Yuri, for being with us. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye bye.